Hi everyone, so I received my PiBoy XRS pre-order last week, so I thought I'd just do a quick video to cover off my first impressions and an initial review of the handheld. So the PiBoy XRS is Experimental Pi's first horizontal case release and houses a full-size Raspberry Pi 4B inside it. As with everything Pi related, there has been a lot of delays and availability issues brought on by the global chip shortage, and unfortunately this handheld suffers a bit because of it. Ultimately, the emulation possible from a Pi 4B now in relation to the Pi 4's release is a lot less impressive than the retro handhelds available in similar price ranges. So unfortunately, there's an aspect to the release that it feels a little late to the party, where a lot of the factors at play would have been completely out of Experimental Pi's control. With all that said though, anyone who's seen my previous Pi coverage will know that I'm a bit of a Raspberry fan, love a DMG inspired design, and have been a fan of Experimental Pi's previous work. So I still think that if you're looking for a Pi-driven handheld, then there's a lot to like with the PiBoy XRS. So the PiBoy XRS comes partially assembled in the sense you need to add your own Raspberry Pi 4B, plug in the battery, and then reassemble the case. I personally did this without the need to look up any assembly instructions online. It literally is that straightforward, and it really is a very neat design internally. The stacked shoulder buttons, but the only thing I had to be careful with reassembling is it's relatively easy to knock the pole out of alignment when putting the back of the case back on. But other than that, all very straightforward, with very easy access to the Pi's I/O, including the SD card, once assembled. So the build quality of the PiBoy XRS is pretty solid. You've got a clear DMG-inspired design, which both has its advantages and disadvantages. From the top down, you've got full access to the Pi's USB and Ethernet ports. The shoulder buttons are stacked and easy to press, perhaps a little too easy. There really isn't much travel to the buttons. Obviously, they're not analog shoulder buttons, so technically it doesn't really have to be. And the fact that they're neatly stacked over one another does make it easy to distinguish between the front and back rows, to be fair to the design. The big spacey face-fronting buttons and smaller D-pad are both very DMG Gameboy inspired. They're a lot softer and more restrictive than I'm used to. At first, I wasn't sure if I was going to like them or not, but they translate very well to gameplay, especially the old retro handhelds. There's just something a bit more authentic about playing Game Boy or Game Boy Color games with this kind of control scheme, and I found myself really soon adapting to the more loose controls and actually quite liking them. I really appreciate the quick access to the micro SD card slot, despite it being a bit of a tight fit, and really like the overall design of the handheld. The small design flares, like the outline of the cartridge at the top, look really cool in my eyes. Despite its super retro look, it's a very comfortable fit in the hand, where the weight distribution especially is handled really well. We've also got two joysticks, both press into L3 and R3, and they're well placed and pretty comfortable to use, though you'll likely be using the D-pad for the vast majority of your time with the handheld. Those with a keen eye would have noticed there's no volume button or wheel anywhere, but Experimental Pi have included the menu button alongside the select and start buttons. This brings up a menu in-game that allows you to control both volume and brightness, as well as acting as a power button too. Experimental Pi have an official PiBoy image available for the XRS, which you'll need to flash to a micro SD card before loading up with your ROMs. So speaking of which, I'll cut some gameplay now and then summarise back up at the end. So overall, I am a fan of the PiBoy XRS. To me, it's one of those handhelds which logically, if I think with my brain, I know there's more bang for your buck available elsewhere. But the quality of the experimental Pi's build and design here, alongside the fact it does make the most of the Pi 4, and is able to handle the heat the Pi 4 is known for well, while offering both good and nostalgic controls, make me think with my heart with this one. I'd love to know your views on it, but that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching.